Corin Havath had smuggled illegal tech through collapsing wormholes, sweet-talked death cultists out of sacrificing him, twice, and survived a drinking contest with a sentient slime. But nothing in his morally flexible resume prepared him for walking through the shimmering gates of Luminara Prime while holding the tiny hand of a glowing 7-year-old girl who might just be royalty. Maybe. Hopefully. "You sure this is the place?" he asked again, gazing up at towers that looked like they'd been sculpted out of moonlight and melody. The crystalline architecture shimmered with organic curves, pulsing with colors that danced like the aurora, blues and silvers chasing each other across every spire. Beside him, the girl, Leora, squeezed his hand tightly. Her bioluminescent skin brightened with excitement. "The Light City," she whispered, her voice softer than a breeze, yet certain. She hadn't spoken much in the 3-week crawl across half the galaxy. But when she did, it was with eerie clarity. And confidence. Corin hoped she was right. Because turning back wasn't an option. The moment his rickety freighter crossed into Lysanthan space, sleek escort ships with firepower vastly disproportionate to his old hauler had surrounded them. The fact that they were guided to the capital instead of atomized suggested that someone high-ranking knew they were coming. Whether that was a good or bad thing? Still up for debate. "This is Captain Irain of the Royal Defense Wing," crackled a voice through the comms. "Proceed to Dock 7. Any deviation will be treated as an act of war." "Copy that," Corin muttered, nudging the controls. Dock 7 it is. The docking process felt less like landing and more like submitting to galactic customs crossed with a medical exam. Scanners probed every molecule of his ship. Dozens of glowing officials in layered armor poked, prodded, and evaluated. Corin submitted to it all with the weary patience of a man too far from home to argue. But when they turned their attention to Leora, things got weird. The chief of security, an imposing Lysanthan male with silver skin that flickered with unreadable emotion, narrowed his eyes. "Purpose of visit?" "Humanitarian drop," Corin said. "Returning a lost child to her family." The chief's gaze shifted to the girl, who tilted her head and spoke a single phrase in melodic Lysanthan. Every guard in the bay froze. "What did she say?" Corin asked, a cold knot forming in his stomach. "She said," the officer cleared his throat, clearly rattled. "She is Princess Leora of House Cerelian, daughter of Queen Aelira. And she wishes to see her mother now." Corin blinked. "Princess." The chief didn't look away from the child. "Princess Leora died 7 years ago. There were no survivors." "I'm not dead," Leora said, indignation flashing across her glowing skin. "I just got lost." Things escalated quickly after that. Instead of being detained, which Corin had fully expected, they were escorted from the docking bay by an honor guard that could have repelled a planetary invasion. The streets of Luminara Prime buzzed as word of the girl's return spread like plasma fire through the crystal-lit city. Leora, for her part, walked with quiet pride, observing everything with a familiarity that made Corin's stomach twist in ways he didn't understand. She knew this place. "You really think this is happening?" he murmured as ceremonial guards surrounded their hover transport. "She puts people in reflection chambers," Leora said innocently, then added, "much more efficient." That was comforting. Sort of. The palace was even more surreal. Walls flowed like frozen waterfalls, shifting in color and form. Corridors branched organically, pulsing with life. Each checkpoint got more intense: retinal scans, genetic verification, psychic resonance tests. Corin was beginning to feel like a particularly suspicious alien vegetable. Finally, a guard nodded. "Her Majesty has been informed. You are to be received immediately." "Immediately?" Corin looked down at his travel-worn boots. "Shouldn't I don't know, bathe? Learn how to bow?" "No time." The throne room defied description. One enormous chamber carved from a single crystal monolith, catching and refracting light into rivers of color. Dozens of nobles lined the walls, their skin aglow with patterns that whispered in unspoken languages. And at the center of it all, seated on a throne that hummed with power, was Queen Aelira of the Lysanthan Empire. Corrin had seen pictures. Diplomatic dossiers. Hollow briefings. None of them came close. She was tall, resplendent in silver-blue regalia, her eyes sharp as shattered stars. Her presence hit like gravity. As she stood, time seemed to pause. Her gaze landed on the child. "Leora," she whispered. Without hesitation, the girl let go of Corrin's hand and ran. "Mother." The sound of her voice rang through the crystalline hall like music. The queen descended the steps with something dangerously close to desperation, and caught her daughter in arms that trembled with 7 years of grief. The entire hall seemed to exhale. Around them, nobles watched in stunned silence. Some cried. Others simply stood in awe as the impossible unfolded before them. "She's mine," Queen Aelira murmured, her voice breaking. "She's really mine." Corrin didn't move. Didn't breathe. He'd just returned a lost princess to an alien queen. A queen who could probably dismantle a solar system with a gesture. And his life was now, officially, very complicated. Then came the court politics. "Your Majesty," began a robed elder, "may we suggest genetic confirmation to? You doubt I can recognize my own daughter?" Aelira's voice dropped into a register that could melt titanium. "No. No, of course not, my queen." The poor elder's luminescence flared with panic. Her gaze turned toward Corrin. "You," she said, stepping forward. "Just Corrin," he replied awkwardly. "You brought my daughter home. She asked to see the light city. I didn't know, she just seemed like a kid who needed help." "A lost child," Aelira echoed, smiling faintly at Leora. "Yes. That's exactly what she was." "Are you still mad about the garden thing?" Leora asked. "What garden thing?" "The one where I tried to make the singing crystals louder by hitting them with your staff. You were 4. Am I still grounded?" Queen Aelira laughed, or maybe cried. "Possibly both." "No, my heart. You're definitely not grounded." "Cool. I want to check if my crystal collection's still there." "Of course. But first." She turned to Corrin. "How do I thank you for giving me back the thing I thought I'd lost forever?" "You don't have to. I just did what anyone would do." "No," Aelira said. "You did what a good person would do." Then, as if this situation wasn't already beyond surreal, a coughing lord attempted to interrupt. "Your Majesty, the return of the heir will affect succession law, treaty alignments." "It can all wait," the queen snapped. "Tonight, I have dinner. With my daughter. And the man who brought her home." Corrin tried to protest, but she silenced him with a glance. "You will dine with us. You'll be given proper attire. Though anyone brave enough to smuggle a princess through pirate space doesn't need to impress anyone with clothing." As they moved through the palace, the child skipping happily beside him, Corrin realized, his life had changed. Forever. Dinner with the Queen of Luminara Prime was, unsurprisingly, a surreal experience. The private dining chamber might have been smaller than the throne room, but it was no less dazzling. Walls of light-reactive crystal shifted colors with the emotional temperature of the room, casting soft glows of golden warmth and serenity as they sat down. Corrin, now dressed in formal attire that had probably cost more than his entire ship, tried not to fidget like a kid at a disciplinary hearing. Across from him sat Queen Aelira, impossibly regal even when carving slices of nectar cake for her daughter. And beside him was Princess Leora, formerly a stowaway refugee, now seated like she'd never left this place. "So," the queen said, sliding a plate toward Leora. "Tell me about the camp." Leora chewed her food carefully, then answered with the same measured calm she'd shown throughout their journey. "It was busy. Everyone had jobs. Mine was watching for the bad ships and keeping the little ones calm. Corin winced slightly. Bad ships? Slavers, Leora said, matter of fact. Or raiders. Sometimes just mean people. Queen Aelira's fork froze mid-cut. The warm light in the room dimmed, shifting to cool tones, silver and dusky blue. You were hiding from slavers? All the time, the girl said, shrugging. I was good at it. I helped others hide, too. Corin watched the queen's posture stiffen, her shoulders tight with fury. It was the kind of quiet rage that could collapse a planet, not the explosive kind. This happened under the jurisdiction of the Galactic Protection Authority. If you call ignoring border systems jurisdiction, sure, Corin said, and then immediately regretted his tone. Sorry, Your Majesty. But yeah. The GPA only protects planets with economic leverage. Typical, the Queen muttered, setting her utensils down. I'm changing that. Effective immediately. Leora, utterly unfazed by the political storm brewing across the table, leaned forward with a hopeful look. Can I have dessert now? Corin promised me sweets when we got to the Light City. Aelira blinked, and the light in the chamber softened. Of course, my heart. What would you like? The ones that taste like starlight, Leora said with great seriousness. The Queen's face flickered with something soft. Crystallized nectar cakes. Your favorite when you were 4. I'm 11 now, Leora pointed out, but I still like them. Corin froze. 11. She had been 4 when she disappeared. 7 years surviving on the fringes of the galaxy. Leora, he asked gently, do you remember anything about what happened? The day you got separated? The light from her skin dimmed slightly. There was fire. And screaming. Someone grabbed me and put me in a pod. Told me to be still. Said bad people were coming. Who grabbed you? Aelira's voice was tight. A guard. She had the silver marks, the kind that protect the royal family. She said she'd come back. Leora paused, voice quieter. She didn't. The Queen looked away, her luminescence folding in on itself. Then the pod must have misfired. Instead of returning here, it threw you to the outer ring. Corin added, she spent years surviving with war orphans. In a place where even the grown-ups were barely hanging on. Not alone, Leora said, looking proud. Other kids helped. And Corin. He came and brought me home. The Queen turned to him again, eyes unreadable. Which reminds me. Why were you in that camp? Corin cleared his throat. Unofficially delivering medical supplies. The official channels kept getting intercepted, or buried in bureaucracy. So, a few aid orgs started using freelancers. You're a smuggler, Aelira said, but there was no heat in the words. Smuggler with a conscience, he corrected. The kind who thinks saving lives matters more than paperwork. The Queen's mouth twitched, an expression halfway between admiration and surprise. That's an unusual philosophy for someone in your line of work. Unusual problems call for unusual solutions, he replied. Then, she smiled. Not the diplomatic, measured smile she wore as a sovereign. A real one. It hit Corin like a pulse cannon to the chest. You're refreshingly direct, Corin Haveth. A voice at the door interrupted the moment. Your Majesty, a royal guard said, her voice urgent. Apologies for the interruption. Commander Virex reports concerning movements among several noble houses. Aelira's entire posture shifted. Instantly, the sovereign returned. Define, concerning. Political repositioning, Your Majesty. Intelligence suggests factions assumed the heir was deceased. Her return threatens power structures they've carefully nurtured. In other words, they're panicking, the Queen said. And planning. Likely. Commander Virex recommends increasing palace security and initiating preemptive scans for conspiracy activity. Corin looked between them. Preemptive scans. It means, the Queen replied coolly, that people who made plans assuming I'd never have an heir may now consider alternative options. Alternative like. Corin trailed off. Assassination, Alira said bluntly. Leora, who'd been quietly finishing her cake, didn't flinch. Someone already tried, she said. Blew up the guest wing. What? I was fine, the girl added calmly. Mother moved me to Corin's quarters. And gave you a sidearm? Corin asked, eyes wide. She took it herself, the Queen said. Disarmed an attacker. Neutralized the threat. Very efficient. Corin gawked at the 11-year-old. She grew up in a war zone, Alira said. You did more than return my daughter. You returned someone who never gave up. Corin looked at Leora, who was now carefully licking nectar glaze off her fingers. She's tougher than half the mercs I've flown with. The Queen turned serious again. Which is why we now have a situation. Assassination attempts don't stop with the target. They expand to witnesses. Witnesses meaning you. Right. You're under royal protection from this point forward, Alira said. Voluntary or otherwise. And if I leave? You'll be under royal protection while traveling, she said, smiling in a way that wasn't entirely comforting. Corin leaned back in his chair and exhaled. All this because I gave a kid a ride. Because you gave the right kid a ride, Alira corrected. And because some debts demand more than thanks. Around them, guards quietly initiated emergency lockdown protocols. Servants sealed the dining chamber. The mood shifted, tension sliding through the room like cold mist. Corin glanced at Leora. She seemed unfazed. That's when it hit him, this girl, this glowing, stubborn, brave little royal, had trusted him to get her home. And now he was at the center of an empire's most volatile crisis since the heir disappeared. He hadn't planned to be a hero. But then again, he never planned much of anything. And now? Now he was in it. All the way. The attempt came at dawn. Which, Corin thought as he rolled out of his bed and reached for the small blade under his borrowed pillow, was surprisingly polite for an assassination. A series of muffled thuds shook the palace walls, followed by the sharp whine of energy discharges echoing down the crystalline corridors. Defensive systems kicked in with a hum so low it rattled in his bones, plasma fields and kinetic barriers locking into place. A voice crackled through the comm panel embedded in his doorframe. Sir Havath, this is Captain Nira of the Royal Guard. Please remain in your quarters. There is an active breach underway. Yeah, Corin muttered, pulling on the formal tunic he'd never expected to wear in a gunfight. That was my plan. How bad is the situation? He called toward the comm. The kind that includes explosives, rogue palace guards, and very poor tactical planning, Captain Nira replied with a dry edge. Her Majesty requests that you ensure the safety of Princess Leora. Wait, she's not here, is she? Hello, Corin, came a small voice behind him. He spun. Leora sat cross-legged on the guest bed, fully dressed, calm as ever. In her lap was a deactivated guard's sidearm. Her fingers traced the trigger guard like she'd been trained. She looked up at him with the serene confidence of someone who had survived much worse. Mother said I'd be safer with you, she added, as if they were talking about an overnight babysitting arrangement. And the sidearm? He asked, eyeing the unconscious body of a man slumped near the door, blaster scorch across his armor and a dazed expression stuck on his face. He tried to grab me. Wasn't very good at it. You stunned him. I'm not allowed to kill people unless Mother says so. Palace rules. Corin blinked. Palace rules, he repeated slowly, trying to process what kind of empire had formal guidelines for child-sanctioned assassination. Before he could ask a follow-up question he wasn't sure he wanted the answer to, the Queen appeared at the door. Not swept in. Not was announced. Just appeared. Silent, controlled, and dressed in combat armor that somehow still looked like royalty. Sleek, reflective, and terrifyingly elegant. Majesty, Corrin said, saluting more out of instinct than protocol. Guessing the security breach is real. Real and stupid, Illyra replied, stepping into the room and nodding at the unconscious kidnapper. Lord Sinden's faction. Apparently, they assumed we wouldn't notice an early morning coup if it happened before breakfast. You handled it comprehensively, she said. Her voice was like calm water over a deep current. Their operatives are now deceased, imprisoned, or, at least in one case, naked and tied to a palace chandelier. Corrin didn't ask. Lord Sinden, he asked instead. Attempted to flee. Was caught in the hangar bay disguised as a janitorial bot. There are images. Leora giggled. I want to see them later. You will, Illyra promised. Corrin looked between them. This is normal for you. No, the Queen replied, moving closer to check Leora for injuries. But I've been preparing for this ever since she disappeared. Political predators don't stop circling just because they think the prey is gone. And now that she's back, they're biting each other over who miscalculated harder. Leora looked up. Did you question the ones who got caught? Illyra's luminescent markings flickered, bright gold with undercurrents of stormy gray. Yes, my heart. Lord Sinden confessed. He was behind the original attack on the royal transport. Corrin's jaw tightened. You orchestrated a bombing to eliminate a child. He believed eliminating the heir would allow the council to manipulate the crown through a proxy regent, Illyra said softly. The escape pod was meant to self-destruct. But a royal guard, Captain Sorrel, overrode the system and launched Leora to safety. She saved me, Leora whispered. She died buying you those 7 years, the Queen said. And we'll honor her sacrifice. There was a long silence. Then Illyra turned to Corrin. Which brings us to you. Me, he said. Again. You exposed a conspiracy that threatened the Empire. You brought my daughter home. And you've proven that compassion and clear thinking are more valuable than most official policies. I'm just a smuggler who got lucky. No, she said, stepping closer. You're the kind of person I want advising me on humanitarian matters. Corrin's eyebrows lifted. You want me in government? I want you to be effective. Titles are irrelevant. Influence is not. He gave a crooked smile. You're recruiting me. I'm offering you the chance to prevent other children from going through what Leora endured. To create protection protocols, streamline aid delivery, reform refugee law. That's a lot. It's important. Leora piped up. You get to stay here. And have dinner with us. And make Mother smile. Illyra looked mildly alarmed. Leora. What? It's true. You asked the kitchen staff about human dating traditions. Leora. She wanted to know if giving sweets counted as flirting. Corrin choked on nothing. You've been asking about. She also asked if shared meals counted as romantic gestures, the girl added. The Queen's luminescence flared in visible embarrassment. Leora, perhaps it's time you. Go eat more nectar cakes, the girl offered brightly. Exactly. When the girls skipped off to the attached sitting room, humming, Corrin looked at the Queen. So, that was subtle. Illyra sighed. In the past 24 hours, you've protected my daughter, risked your life, and reminded me what genuine kindness looks like. Forgive me for being slightly transparent. He studied her face, regal, yes, but something softer had crept in behind the silver-blue markings. Something real. You're not just offering me a job. No, she admitted. I'm offering you a future. A place. And the beginning of something neither of us expected. Corin ran a hand through his hair, still disbelieving. You sure about this? You're honest when it matters. You act when others hesitate. And you made my daughter feel safe when the galaxy failed her. She stepped forward again. Close enough that her glowing skin reflected off his. Corin Haveth, she said quietly. Will you stay? He didn't hesitate. I'll stay. The Queen smiled, slow and real. Then let's get to work. 6 months later, Corin stood at the observation window of the newly established Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, sipping a cup of synth coffee stronger than starship fuel and scanning data reports glowing across the crystalline interface. It was still strange, having an office. Stranger still that it was located inside a former Royal Treasury wing now repurposed for aid logistics. He wore diplomat's robes now, sleek, dark blue with the gold crest of the Lysanthan crown embroidered over his left shoulder. But he still kept a plasma knife strapped beneath his belt, just in case protocol ever needed some encouragement. Outside the window, sunlight refracted through the palace gardens. Leora was down there, her glowing figure darting between flower beds as she showed a small group of refugee children how to cultivate the crystal blossoms unique to her world. The same gardens she'd once been grounded from for trying to make the crystals sing. Behind him, the door slid open with a whisper. He didn't need to turn. I know that walk. And I know that tone, said Queen Aelira, her voice rich with amusement as she entered. She crossed the room with practiced grace and leaned against the desk beside him. Her armor had been replaced by elegant robes today, still battle-capable, but less likely to incite panic in nervous trade envoys. Your new protection protocols are working, she said, gesturing to the glowing interface. Reports from outer system camps show a 50% decrease in resource theft and a measurable increase in survival rates. Corin nodded. Still resistance in the frontier zones. Some nobles don't like being told their private armies can't screen aid shipments. Aelira's luminescence dimmed with irritation. They'll learn. Or they'll lose their charters. I don't make idle threats. No, Corin said with a grin. You really don't. She slid into the chair across from him and leaned forward, fingers laced. Her posture shifted from sovereign to something more intimate. I have a proposal. Professional or personal, he asked, though her warm gold-blue patterns gave the answer away before she spoke. Both. He set his coffee down. Let's hear it. Professionally, the Council of Lords has approved my petition to establish the ministry as a permanent institution. They also approved my recommendation for its minister. Let me guess. You'll need to give up smuggling. Officially. I'm crushed, he deadpanned. And personally? She hesitated, just for a second. For Queen Aelira of the Lysanthan Empire, hesitation was rare. It meant something. I want you to consider making this permanent, she said. All of it. The work. The court. Us. Corin blinked. Are you asking me to marry you? I'm asking you to become my partner, in every way that matters. I want to build an empire that protects children like Leora, and I want to do it with you at my side. Not just as a minister. As family. The word family hit harder than he expected. He looked out the window again. Leora was laughing, holding a bioluminescent flower out to a boy who looked like he hadn't laughed in months. She'd never once questioned his place in her life. She'd decided he was family the moment they landed here. And Leora? He asked. Aelira's voice softened. She told me last night she hopes you stay forever. Because you're the one who brought her home. Corin swallowed hard. Looked back at the woman across from him. Regal, fierce, brilliant, impossible, and then down at the hand she'd quietly extended across the desk. He took it. I accept. Her smile lit the room like sunrise. Good, she said. Leora has already started planning the ceremony. Oh stars, Corin groaned. She insists it involves both species traditions, Elira added helpfully. And crystallized nectar cakes. Many. Of course. They rose together, hand in hand. Behind them, the data reports continued updating, quietly chronicling a shift in the Empire's priorities. Before Corin could make a witty comment, a palace chime sounded. Engagement announced to the Empire of Lysentha, Her Majesty Elira and Minister Corin Havath. The bells echoed through the spires. And in the garden below, a little girl beamed. And that's how one smuggler, one stowaway, and one fiercely protective queen reshaped the future of an empire. It started with a simple act of kindness, a decision to help a lost child find her way home. Corin Havath didn't know he was smuggling royalty. He didn't care. All he saw was someone who needed help. And that one choice unraveled secrets, toppled conspiracies, and rekindled hope in a galaxy that had almost forgotten what that looked like. From hunted outcasts to political players, their journey proves something timeless. The most powerful changes begin not with orders, weapons, or titles, but with compassion. Now, Leora is more than a survivor, she's a symbol. The child who came home and became the heart of an empire. And Corin? He's not just a former smuggler. He's a builder of bridges, protector of the vulnerable, and the man who somehow made the galaxy's most feared monarch fall a little bit in love. And Queen Elira? She's still the same unstoppable force. Only now, she shares her throne, and her fight, for something bigger than legacy. Thanks for watching. If this story pulled at your heart, sparked your imagination, or made you believe in impossible reunions, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more cosmic adventures, and share this story with someone who needs a reminder, the smallest light can change the darkest skies. Until next time, keep dreaming.